Hello everybody, and welcome to this tutorial in which I show you how we can take a SketchUp model like this one, add materials where needed, like the ground, the sink, and also, for example, texture a lamp so it has chrome and light emitting materials, export everything as OBJ, bring it then into Blender. As you see, the scene plugs right into it. Only add cameras, positioned everything, and then refine the material. Add light emitting properties, reflectivity to it, and just hit render and create nice light studies, like you see, for example, done here. This is the same scene, just with a little bit material variations. And all that in a very easy process, creating everything first in SketchUp and then sending it over to Blender to touch up the materials and do the rendering. Okay, let's do it. Before we are going to texture this raw file, I would like to talk about how this environment was modeled, because it is actually very important when you want to create actual and accurate, believable renderings of a space, and that you also follow a modeling process that is very similar to reality. So I will hide everything here besides the floor. And then I will zoom in and rotate to this view. And what you see here is a representation of the floor. So we have the vertical joists and the subfloor that sits on top. Now the subfloor is actually made out of wood, can bend, slightly movable. I have here on top a small layer, 1/4 inch thickness, that should represent the tiles. Now tiles can break, now they're very stiff, which is why we can't put tiles directly on a subfloor, which is made out of wood. I mean, technically speaking, you can, it's just not advisable. So we have to stiffen up the ground under the tiles. And that is the reason why between the tiles and the subfloor is another 1/4 inch layer of a geometry, and that represents actually a concrete mesh reinforced construction. This can be poured, this can be bought in sheets and put down, and essentially it stiffens up the ground under the tiles. The individual tile, as you can see, I didn't model this. You can do if you have the time. It's not necessary because things might change also during the construction. So having just a volume representation of where tiles would be is sufficient, because the actual look of tiles we then can solve via texturing when we render. Now let's take a look at the room, and I'm going to hide the wall. And there you also can see the baseboard sits on the tiles, the threshold is between or right inside. Now the frame sits actually on top of the concrete layer. Here the door stopper is right more or less on the threshold. There's a little bit of a gap so air can go or move. Let me turn on here the cabinet. Now everything is nice and flush. There is the countertop. The countertop is a simplified version. It doesn't have the drain modeled in. From the view where we would do the rendering, we wouldn't see it. We have a very basic representation of the mirror, 2 lights, some dingbats, a set of water, cold and hot, handle and faucet, and a hanging toilet plus a picture frame. And then the wall is basically a representation of the 2x4 framing inside, finished already with the drywall outside and inside. And then when I turn on here the ceiling, now we can see right through it. So there's actually the joist again. the subfloor for the floor on top. And when I now hide here this the wall, you see this is actually the drywall, and that would be the ceiling. And you can see it sits also right under the joist. And kind of like finishes the room inside. So that opening. Okay. Very good. So to have the modeling and the visibility also a little bit easier, it is advisable at this point also to create a section plane. I will select this view, section plane, very good. And then this I can move slightly forward. So you see that then this way I can nicely peek into the space. We can have multiple section views. I have here also the elements added to it based on the operating system, Windows or Mac. You can customize your toolbars. I will add actually one more section plane here from the side. And for example, move this one in. So I have a side view. We could also do one from the top, but I can simply turn off here the tag for the ceiling, and we'll do the same. And then we have various options for showing the walls which are cut filled, turning the functionality off, and turning even the visibility of those section planes off. So they're actually really quite functional, and to switch between them, you just double click on them. Okay, very good. So the final goal later will be to add materials to the walls, simple colors. A drywall has a little bit of a structure to it. Then we will add kind of like a stone material to the tabletop, a mirroring effect and light, backlight to the mirror. The baseboard is just painted white, somewhat glossy. And then the floor will be interesting because that actually will be tiled. So I will actually turn these off for the moment. Turn also the floor on, cabinet and all this off. And now let's take a look at how we can create actually the texture for the tiles. I have added the dimensional readout. So plus minus, this is a 78-inch wide bathroom, 102 length. Ideally, also when you build something or you want to tile it, you want to prevent having to cut tiles unnecessarily. So let's say it's 80 inches wide. If we then use tiles which are 10 inches, we can put 8 inches right from one side to the other side. If we come with 7-inch tiles at one point, we have like a smaller version and need to cut height or be creative with it. In this case here, this is since it's a beginner exercise, we will simplify this a little bit. But the reason also why I put down the dimensions is when we create these textures, we have to be in mind about how big later in a texture is such a tile. So to create tiles, I'm going here to architectures.org, go to create, and I will switch this to stack for the tiling. And let's say 8 by 8. Very good. I will switch this material to the meadow terrazzo, and I remember 78 inches. Now that is the length. So when I have 8 tiles and each tile is 15.7 inches, I will have 127. If I type in 10, I have 81. So that is because we also have here a mortar. Now if we set this to 0, for example, or maybe recess joint, or we can turn this kind of like all off there. So now this is actually 80. And if we go to 10 here too, very nice. There. And now we can also, for example, color this. We have some other options here. Now I see like basically, so this is 80 by 80. And again, this should be 78. Okay, so when I go and say, what about 9.5 inch? So 75. If I maybe add a small joint here, recess joint is basically showing you how that is set up. We can also say fine, because this line will be cut with a machine. So this will be really straight. Very good. So 76, 77. Now, so we're pretty close, kind of like to the dimensions we need. Very good. There we are. Okay. So now we have actually, let's say, a 78 inch area. So this image we would create now would be very believable. It's not 100% fitting in there into the proportion we need, but this will be fine. So let's download this one. Just a basic sample, and there we are. Very good. I'm going to hide this. And then on the desktop, here is actually the tile texture I have. Very nice. So this one I'm going to drag into here. I have this one. I have another texture here. I have, for example, a basic tile grid too. Very good. Okay, so what I can do now is when I go to SketchUp, I select the group, double click, select the top face, and now I can create a material. So I bring actually this tile in. New texture. I will navigate to where the texture is. And there I have it. Now I can specify now, so this should be 78 by 78. So I'm stretching this a little bit. Very good. It's fine. There. Let's drag this onto it. And there we are. Beautiful. So now it goes from corner to corner perfectly. Here we have an odd cut. Now there you can see, so the first tile is set at the entrance, and then to the back there is another cut done. I could right click and say position, and then move this maybe to somewhere else. So maybe I move this here to this corner, but then you see when we would come into the bathroom, we would first step over half of a cut. That's very noticeable. So when I bring this here to the back, to there, this is actually really good. This is perfect. Okay. Yeah, this looks actually really nice. Okay. Again, this is also only projected right onto the top surface. When you're going to edit the group, this is not a material that is applied to the group. You can see the group has no material, just the top face has it. Very nice. Okay. Then let's actually turn on the room, and here this element I will actually move to the cabinet. So when I turn the cabinet on, I have this single. Very nice. So now here I would like to actually have this material kind of like float over it. So new texture. And then now here's, for example, the granite. We have also this material. And the floor we can't take. Let's see how this one looks. Okay. Sometimes you find a nice texture, but then you need to figure out how does this actually really work. I'm not sure about the dimensions here right now, so I type in 32, 32. Very good. And I'm just doing a quick check. So yeah, I drag this onto the group so I can see this material kind of like stretched over the whole area. So this 32, 32 maybe is a tick too big. When I go to edit, I'm adjusting the scale. 64 now, this is actually too big. 16. Yeah, that's interesting. That starts to look a little bit kind of like maybe granite or so. I also do have a granite. So here, let's load this one. And maybe leave this at 32 first, just to see how this looks. Yeah, that's actually not bad. Okay, very good. Now, again, we do not add materials to a group. We can quickly apply it to the group to see how this looks. Later, then, to texture this correctly, we have to drag this to the individual faces. But you see, this is actually quite easy. Not really much work there. And then here, the front face too. The other sides we don't see, so I don't texture them. Okay, very nice. Good. I will show the room. Here is actually this painting. I will go edit, invert selection and height. Go to the painting, double click, and I will give this, let's say, a white material. Maybe something like this. I mean, we don't have pure white, so maybe a gray. And then I'm just dragging this onto it. Quick check. Okay, I just needed to change this for a second there to make sure it got transferred. Very nice. So if I go back here to materials here, this one now I can delete. And then this is now that white material, edit, and I will call this painted wood white. So you saw I gave this material actually a name. That's really quite important. And now on this face, I would like to add a painting. Here I have the painting. There we are. Not really sure about the dimension. So I can drag this onto it. Right click, position. And yeah, this is way too big. So this goes into that corner. And then this goes into that corner. And then actually the painting perfectly fits in. Very good. Good. So let's get out of the group. Show everything. There we are. Very nice. Now, for example, the color of the paint we used for the picture frame, we're going to use also for the trim. So I select everything, drag this color over it. There too, suck. And the rest is actually pretty good. I can do the same also with the door. There we are. Thank you. And to be super correct, we can do the same also there with the stopper. Very nice. Okay. The threshold under the door I'm ignoring right now because when we do our rendering, we might actually not necessarily see it. Okay, very nice. So here I have these two lights. I will select them, then I go and invert selection and hide it, because I would like actually the top to be silver, and then this I would like to be reflective, not reflective, emitter light. So I can double click, select everything. Here on the Mac, I will make a new material, black, and then I go maybe a little bit gray. There we are. Bring this over. Thank you. And then I will, you saw, left mouse button click, drag over the center of the faces, change this maybe to pure white. Yeah, hold on, and change the color. So why pure white? You will see for a second. So I can select everything here again, and then colors in model, colors named, there, okay. There's actually our metal, and then there's our light. Hold on. This might be this one. To be sure, I'm just adding the same material there too, and then right click and say edit. And then this I call light. Okay, good. And this one here, right click edit, I will call chrome. That's reflective. Very nice. Okay. And this black here, I could go edit and maybe call this mirror. Very nice. So I will go back and unhide all. Then I will select the mirror and go to invert selection, hide it. Thank you. So this whole mirror will have different areas. So this, for example, will be another reflective part. And then we have here these faces. Actually, it's easier if I select everything and then say, so here you all are chrome, you are the black part, and then maybe here this back, that is actually the light. Yeah, because there will be a backlight behind the mirror. Very nice. Cool. And then unhide all. There we are. And you see, slowly we're actually working us towards the materials. This is actually a chrome material. And here you would say, oh, it looks like it's reflective. And I have this model in here on purpose because this is a very old school, I kind of like would say from the 90s idea of having a material on something that looks reflective to give you that illusion, but it totally is not reflective. It's a static image. It's maybe cool when you in SketchUp you make a screenshot, but it is kind of incorrect and bad, and we are going to replace this. Very good. Okay, so we can also now, for example, deal with the wall. So maybe this and this and this wall here I all select there, there, there. Just the walls I need. Thank you. I'm not really necessarily sure what color I will use. Maybe kind of like a really kind of like this. Okay. And then here we can call this wall color. Okay. Very good. Okay. Then the cabinet is the last piece where we would like to do something. This will be an interesting design. So we will also here invert everything else, hide it, double click, and then so here's actually the group, double click. So everything here I have selected. I go to paints and I would need to see the wall color. Sorry, the wood color. There it is. Okay, apply to it. Then I can do the same also to here. So we were actually matching everything, and you saw that here these are actually components, so they're shared. I only needed one piece to adjust, and then I will just select this face here and make this one white. So we can make light come from it. Yeah, it's textured. Very good. Okay. Let's unhide all. Good. At this point, we basically have, I would say, applied enough materials to all the parts in Blender, sorry, in SketchUp. So we can now actually bring all this over to Blender. And the nice thing when we bring this over to Blender, or actually any render engine in general, these materials which we recreated, the software then will find and see. And then we can simply modify the materials, perfect them, hit render, and then we're done. We don't have to do much more. To then export everything over to Blender, you can go to File, Export, 3D Model. You can specify the name, the location. OBJ is the best format to use for Blender and also basically for all other programs. Then you can go to Options. You want to have Export Texture Map still on, swap Y and Z turned off, and really important, the unit system should be meters. Blender works internally in meters, so when we export our kind of like inch model as meters during the export, the model will be, if you want to say this, scale-wise adjusted. So when we import it into Blender, it will have the same dimension. Click OK. Click Export. Takes a moment. And there you can see SketchUp gives us the result, 42 groups, some mesh, 10 materials, and some textures, etc. Okay, very good. So we now go to the desktop. There you see it. Here's actually the OBJ file. And there we are. The material definition. Here is the folder with all the textures SketchUp actually exported. I also, just to note, I have my own folder here with materials too. So later we will merge this together. Okay, very good. So let's go ahead and start Blender. There we are. I press A and X, delete everything. I go File, Import Wavefront. But before we do this, let's make sure our unit system here is set to metric in meters. Okay, then import. There's the OBJ file. Forward is Y, Z is up, and here split by group. You want to have this turned on. Click Import OBJ. And look at that. Middle mouse button, we can rotate our view, scroll wheel, zoom in. Let's go and take a look at the material preview. There, everything carried over beautifully. We also have here the collection with all the individual parts. So these are all the pieces SketchUp exported for us as individual parts. Very good. You see, that actually was pretty easy to bring that stuff over. Since we're actually here in the process of bringing geometry over, let's go back to SketchUp. I'm going to hide this. This goes, this goes, this goes. You go. I actually would like to bring this over now. So you see it's just a different part of my model. So I select all this, export. I call this maybe ceiling, so I know what this is. Settings all the same. Export. Very good. Then let's go back to here. I will close this collection, make a new collection. Then import the ceiling, same settings, all the same. Import. There they are. You see perfectly, they even snap right into place. And with these objects still selected, or left mouse button and hold shift, I can select all those, and then I can press M for move to this collection too. And for example, this collection now I call ceiling. I can turn this off for the moment. You see, that is actually how easy it is, and also to bring additional elements over. Now, currently the ceiling is flat, but I know I would like to have a light in the ceiling, but I would like the light not to be visible. So I will go to SketchUp, hide this. I will show the room. There we are. Okay. And now I will kind of like model myself a little bit of geometry. So here's, for example, the rectangle. So this is kind of like a 78 by 10 rectangle. There we are. Thank you. Very good. And then I would like this to go down a little bit. Let's say 5 inches. And then I would like this to go up a little bit. You see how I'm going to this point, bring this over along the y-axis till it hits there. There we are, very good. And then I can draw this line over, click, very good. From here along the y-axis on this wall, clicking, you see how I'm filling in everything. There we are. And yeah, I actually, hold on. I have one line here I delete. And then this, for example, I would like to texture. You see, this is actually white right now. So this wall I will hide. So I can rotate my view. You see, this is actually blue. These faces, right click, and then reverse faces. So we flip the direction. Very nice. And I go to material, and the ceiling we could give a specific material. Here I have a gray. Right click, edit, and say ceiling. There we are. Yeah, maybe a little bit brighter. Thank you. And then this here, this will be my light. Light. Okay, very good. And this whole thing, I make a group. I can, to make things easier, put this into the ceiling. Very good. Then all this I can turn off there. Okay, it slightly penetrates. So you see here, I need to actually bring this face slightly down. So I modeled a tick inaccurate, but that's okay. There. So this goes down. Very nice. And I have here this edge, which I'm going to There, click, and then I press the up arrow key and just move it straight down. There we are. So what happens actually if I only select this and the rest is all visible? I go to then export and let's say ceiling light. Now there are like multiple faces, 11 groups. No? So this basically means that when I go now to Blender back and import this new object, and the whole ceiling actually came with it. So you saw it's not necessarily what is selected that's being brought over, but actually what is visible that is being brought over. So here I just simply deleted everything else. So there is my light. I can double click it and call this ceiling light. So I know what that is. Maybe new collection for those who want floor. So FLOOR. So then I can, with the selection tool, select everything that is kind of like part of the floor and M and go to floor. I can turn floor also off. And I'm simply selecting each piece and then simply press M and move this over. And maybe here the threshold there. And the rest I can keep. Just to make you understand how easy it is then to rebuild, for example, these collections, so that we have it very easy to adjust everything. Maybe here I make one last and call this one wall. So when I select the wall, M and wall, I can easily turn this on off and see everything else there. Okay, very good. Beautiful. With this, we basically brought everything over that was important from SketchUp to come over. And now, since all the pieces are there, we can go ahead, add actually the camera, refine the materials, refine the lights, and hit render. Before we do this, however, let's actually save this file. We can go save, go to the desktop, and call this bathroom. Okay, very good. And I'm going to quit the file on purpose because I would like to show you something. I have here a folder simply called bathroom. Inside this folder, I'm going to put literally everything in there. Maybe not the SketchUp files, they can stay outside, but specifically the blend file. And then also here, the two folders of the textures. These OBJ files, by the way, once we imported it over, we can also remove. Now, the reason why I show you this is the blend file, when we imported the OBJ geometry, made connections to where on the computer are actually the textures. Now, they're inside this folder. And I have more textures here. So what I can do is I can, for example, these, I can copy and bring them over, or I'll change my view here, there. I can, for example, select all those and bring them over to here. And then this I will remove. So I have now one folder with textures. When I now go back to Blender and start it, it's actually important. Whoa, look at that. You see, some things are kind of like magenta. And that is actually a warning sign that a material got lost or texture. So this is actually a very easy fix. Now you keep in mind, we have now here this texture folder. So we can go to File and say External Data, Find Missing Files. And by the way, that's the same thing also in Illustrator or in InDesign. Textures, find missing files. Is there something? And voila, there the connections are re-established. And that's it. So I'm going to save this one more time, quit this, because the whole point of this demonstration is now that I do not just copy this blend file to somewhere else. I actually move this whole bathroom project folder. Let's call this bathroom rendering. So it's more logical what this means. When you archive or you move your files this way, you never are running into the problem of by accident losing a reference to an image. Okay, with that said, let's go back to Blender. Okay, so here we are. We would like to create a nice rendering of the camera right there. So I think this will be the first and best thing to do. So let's actually go to add and add a camera. So the camera is there. I can press N. There's now the transform panel. I can click move, bring this camera back, bring this camera up, and everything is in meters. Now let's actually switch everything in the scene simply to imperial, separate units. So now we can see this should be at, let's say, 6 feet. The rotation, click and drag, I set to 0. Then we can see Z is rotated, so this has to be minus 90 degrees. And then along, nope, not Y, along X, I go 90 degrees. So I look horizontal. Now, I do not look up or down. Very important. We want this camera to be horizontal, so vertical lines on our walls will remain vertical. Now, if I go to this view and I'm inside the move command, I can move, for example, this camera left and right and try to maybe eyeball it. This is now the moment where it's good to set up our interface a little bit more. So this border I move up. I will switch this to shader editor. Then here on this border, right click, split vertical and click. Here I press N and T and click on the camera icon. There we are. And very easy way to frame this perfectly centered. You see I am just moving the camera a little bit back and then left and right with the Y key arrow. If you hold shift, you can do these manipulations very gently. So in small steps. So click on the left, the green arrow, and then hold shift and move your mouse left and right. Cool, there we are. Let's actually move the camera now into the space and ooh, we don't really see enough. This is terrible. So what can we do now? Well, the bad thing would be we switch this camera to a wide angle camera. Maybe 15, we can actually then see more, but it looks really terribly distorted. So let's go back to maybe a 75 millimeter, and then I move the camera out. Whoops, careful what you click on. 75. Here along the x-axis, I click and drag again, I move the camera out. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, check this out. With the camera selected, go to viewport, display, and limits. And now what the limits are, clip start and end. Maybe clip end, we can type in 20 feet. And clip start, maybe 4 feet. And when I zoom in now, you see here there's a start and there's an end. So this start, I will move till it's actually inside the bathroom. But now it should be not inside the wall, but before or after the wall. And then my end, obviously I want to be behind the room. And what this basically means, think about the section view in SketchUp. It basically opens a wall so we can look in. And this is kind of like a camera section view. We start looking into the space. Okay. Now, there are a few things we can adjust. So for example, the camera is at a height of 6 feet. What about 5 feet? 5 feet is then we see less of the ceiling, we see a little bit more of the wall, but now the sink is kind of funny. So maybe 6 feet, we go back, but then we don't really see anything from the ceiling. No problem. And let's actually go and do a shift. So everybody who is familiar with photography, you start noticing, oh wow, this is like architectural photography. Yeah, we're simulating basically how to set everything up. The room is also more portrait and the camera is landscape. So let's adjust this and go to the output. And let's say we go 1000 by 2000. So it's kind of like a 1:2 if you want to see it that way. When I play with these values, you can see now how I can bring this, maybe in my case 1300 is maybe what I will use. So I'm nearly at the wall. Okay, but the camera is looking way too high. Okay, so if I go back to the camera, I can do the shift a little bit more. There. Very good. So now I also see sufficiently amount of, for example, the ground. If I go back to here, let's see if how we can maybe play with these values a little bit more. So 1300 by 800, 1100. Yeah, now this is a little bit better. We don't need to crop the camera perfectly, how could I say that, into the room, because we can snap this later off in Photoshop anyway. So we can render this a tick bigger. So the way how we have this right now is actually really good. I like the camera is nicely centered into the room. We look horizontal. Now you see the vertical lines are vertical. This is very nice. We see quite a lot of the floor. The last thing maybe to try out. So this is a 75 camera. This camera, I will make a copy. Copy and paste. So I have two now. No? I can, for example, double click and say this is a 75. And then this one here, I will make maybe a 50. So with this camera selected, say 50, very good. We don't really see much. This camera is actually not active. This camera is active because it has the full triangle. So select this camera, view, set active object as camera. There we are. I have to middle mouse button, rotate my view. And then here I can now move this camera a little bit further in. I might have to adjust also the clip start. So here I can bring this back. Control 0, by the way, on the numpad is the hotkey to switch between the cameras. So this camera can still move quite a lot more forward. And then here, this clipping I have to remove further to the back. So there is now the front wall. Very good. So now it's a matter now of preference. What actually will look better? The higher the focal length, the more this starts looking in orthographic. The smaller the focal length, the more this starts looking like a wide angle camera. Now, so you can see that actually the depth got a little bit flatter. So it's a matter of preference, what we like. I do find that maybe this 75 is a little bit too long and the 50 is a little bit too short, but it's okay. We can always add more cameras or switch around them. Well, let's say now the cameras are set up. So we are now ready to configure our environment. First, I would like to go to the render engine and set this to cycles. Scroll wheel, and then here I can set this to rendering. So you see this is pitch black. Well, it makes sense. There is no light. No? We want the renderings also to run really fast. So I will set samples here to 10 and denoiser also to 10, so that after 10 samples, which renders very short, the engine is going to denoise the result. Okay, very nice. Okay. The way I think it really works well to also work with materials and rendering is first to start taking care with lights, for example, because this is something we're going to see. So I will select here my ceiling object, which has the light in it. And this object has two materials. You see the ceiling and here the light. This light is currently called light.001 because it uses the same material also as the lamps, but we want this also to work as a different material. So this is actually really good. In case here there would be a number like 2 or 3, multiple objects would use that material. In this case, it doesn't. So here I call this light ceiling. Okay. Then I can here scroll down. There's my emission. And the emission I set now to white for the moment. And look at that. Now we can see how light is coming down from the top. That's actually pretty cool. I will switch over to the node editor. Scroll wheel, zoom in a little bit. And then I will go add converter black body. Scroll wheel, zoom in. And this black body, I will connect to the emission. And now I can change the color. So 5550 degree Kelvin, for example. This is the easiest way to control the color actually of a light instead of trying to pick the color, because we can very quickly pick incorrectly. So I will go with 5000, so it's a warmer, or 6500. That's kind of like also your display. So you see it's a little bit cooler. It's more bluish. Okay. So, and then here we have the emission strength. We're going to adjust this at one point. Middle mouse button and shift middle mouse button. I'm zooming in a little bit. Here's actually now this one light. So scroll up. Let's take a look. Light in Chrome. Light in Chrome. If I click actually the doors here, I also see light. So they all use actually the same light material. So it's shared. Okay, so I will go add converter black body and plug this in. Oh, look at this. That's kind of cool actually. We can even see the light behind. Going kind of like behind the mirror glowing. So 5600, 6500, I mean, there. Okay. So the problem I have now is if I set this emission to 0, you see all these objects get the light the same way. So I need to modify this a little bit, separate it. How do I do this? Plus, I think I have oh, that's hilarious. I managed to give the toilet the light material. So, oh, it's okay. Here, I'm just removing the material of the toilet with the minus. So this object has no material yet. Okay, and then I can go back to the camera, mouse wheel. There we are. Okay. I will work first with the mirror here. So they have light. You see this is used by 8 objects. I click on this and then I could say light mirror. Can click on this lamp, light, click on this, and then I can say light lamp. I can click on the right lamp, and then here I click on the list and see where is light lamp. So I'm swapping this out. Now these two use, as you can see, the same material. I also have here the drawers. So maybe light, I'm just renaming this drawer. 0 or 10. I can just play with there a little bit. Okay, pretty cool. So I'm illuminating the space here actually right now simply via emission materials. Down here, this is a little bit dark under the cabinet. So I could go back to SketchUp, create a geometry, export it, bring it to here, or I could also add the material or the geometry, the lamp here. I switch to wireframe mode. AA, select nothing. Then I go and add an area light. There it is. I bring this area light in top view, kind of like, I don't know, maybe to here. There we are. And I would like to change the size of this area light to be rectangular. Question is, okay, this one. So maybe 76 inches, nearly as wide. Let's say this is an LED strip, 2 inches. There we are. And then I bring this up. Whoa, look at that. So there now I have a light under it. Generates really nice detail there. Can change the view here a little bit. Okay. I'm going to the side view. I'm going to rotate, and just so you see what happens, I can also make the light come more towards me. If I make the light go more towards the wall, it bounces backwards, shining onto the cabinet from right below. I mean, that makes no sense. Most times we would have the light kind of like right under it. So let's say it's some sort of a motion detector triggered light. When I come in, bang, it goes on. So I would like also here to have the black body. So I click use nodes. And then where is the node? If you don't see it, frame selected, zooms right to it, and same process. Easy peasy. There. 6,500. Okay. If I set this to 0, yeah, this overrides it. Very good. So the 10 watts here now is gone. We just used the strength. With the strength of the lights, basically now we can really play. Also, how strong should something be? Is it more glowing? Is it really strong? So when I select the mirror, and so here's the strength. I'm going to make this 10. Now you can really see that from behind it shoots out a lot of light. I select these two, press H to hide it. Here's my area light, press H to hide it. And then here's also the ceiling, press H to hide it. So I can just see it's a really strong light, but because it shines right onto the wall, it doesn't really do as much, or it doesn't shine into the eye. So all good. Alt H to unhide everything. So far, this is actually not too bad. Maybe here, these strips here. Oh, wait. Wrong material. Light drawer there. 0, 10. Make this really glowing to... So if there's an LED light strip, we know the light actually would be right under it. So you see what the bright thing, what we see is actually the vertical part being illuminated. And this can be quite nice when, let's say again, you walk in, everything here's off. I just simply hide this and kind of like you see where's the grip, the handle, because it's all flush, the light illuminates it. Alt H. Okay. We could play with the strength of the light, turn the top light on, bottom light, etc. So at this point now, I think it makes sense to work on the materials. We can start with the ceiling again. So here, ceiling there, let's say ceiling paint. Okay. Most of the stuff we can also do in this element here. So let's make this a matte material. And 0.8, it's kind of like a really bright white. Do not make this 1 because we don't have a white that is that perfectly bright. 0.8 is kind of okay. The same like with black. This is like a black hole. Darks are more dark, but not really black. Okay. For if this should be kind of like a little bit painted, maybe plastic. Now it's reflective. Now you can see, oh, it's actually pretty glossy. And then the roughness, 0.3. That adds a little bit of blurriness to it. 0.2, okay. And obviously, such a paint has a little bit of shimmer to it. The reflectivity is not as strong. 0.1 maybe. Or we can lower this till this feels like this is kind of good. So let's go to the wall. Also here, wall color, front color. I think this is front color. This is the, I think the old here wall color. This is where you see this blue tint we have. So here we can do the same. Now 0.2. Oh no, they already see how glossy everything gets. 0.1. Okay, maybe 0.01. So we're just lowering it. So we see, oh, there's a little bit of reflection happening. 0.3. 0.02. There are, for example, measurement devices that can not only measure the color, but also the glossiness of surfaces. Now, and we would transfer this. But essentially, specular is for reflection. 0.5 is everything kind of like plastic. And then everything down to 0 turns this into a matte surface. Okay, we can select the wood trim. Now this is the painted wood. Here the same. 0.2, 0.01. And this would also affect, for example, the door. Upper drawer, painted wood. So this is all carried over already. It's already done. Here, this is front color. We could turn this into porcelain. So here I say, nope, remove and make a new material. Porcelain, there we are. We make this nice and super glossy and shiny. 0.1. And then I'm zooming in here, and then U, and I click and I type in PO for porcelain. You see I'm swapping actually the material out. Super easy. Okay. Now to these funny, yeah, fake images here. So this is a fake reflection. It's just an image. So front color here. So we can call this chrome, by the way, but maybe brushed. There we are. Very good. And then here is this texture image that's being used to show up in the reflection. And when I drag this out, you see this reflection is gone. This whole thing I can select and delete. And then this is metal. So let's make this metallic. Roughness down. Oh, look at that. It's reflective, and it really reflects the environment correctly. It's not a fake reflection. So I can zoom in here a little bit so I don't render on two pieces at the same time. Now, if we want to make this super chrome polished, then roughness 0.1. We add a little bit of brushness to it. It's more blurring it. It's not really brushing it, but from a distance, we wouldn't really see the brush lines anyway. And metallic, well, this is something we need to do because this is metal. Metal has a different reflection color than plastic. And then we could also go to the mirror. I have here chrome, light mirror, mirror. So for example, this mirror, I will make metallic 100%. Specularity I can dial down because this is like a mirror is a metallic element, polished, gives us that reflection. There's normally also a little bit of a tint to it, so that we can keep this out. But you see now that actually that mirror shows everything in the back. When I select the light here, you see the light has the light lamp and the chrome. So question is now, do I want the chrome to be nicely polished, for example, like the mirror, or maybe be the same chrome brushed? Let's say the same chrome brushed, very easy. We can simply chrome brushed and swap this out, this material. So this way then, when I adjust, for example, the material for the faucet, also the lamps will be changed too. Okay, very good. Then we can go here to our surface. It's going to be interesting. So let's see what we have here. I move this up a little bit. Also move this up a little bit. So we have the front color. That's kind of like the default SketchUp color. And then here we have the granite. So there. And if I make this down to 0, this is a nice and reflective surface. And there we can see there's a reflection on it. For the rendering, here's a little trick what we could do to make this look less super sharp. I will go into edit mode. Okay, and then I can select for example, these edges I have here, and I press X and say dissolve. So I'm removing them. So this line is alone. And then this line I can give a bevel weight. There we are. So with this bevel weight, if I give this object now a bevel modifier, and then I say only to the weight, please be maybe 0.25 of an inch. You see there, it actually beveled that for me. And you see this is an effect that can always be overwritten. Can also make this round, so bevel turns into a chamfer. 0.25 to make it really, 0.25 of an inch to make this really small. Chamfer, maybe 0.125 of an inch. And if we set this to none or angle, like everything that is sharp, we might actually see this then apply to all sharp edges. And then it's basically how much angle, 90 degree, 30 degree, 60 degree, it will start doing this. For me, for the presentation, it's only important that the front part actually maybe shows this cut. You know, like this. Very good. Okay. Very nice. Now, the thought now we have here is, do we make this be simply a super reflective plastic surface that is flat? Does it have any structure to it? Or do we give there a little bit of bump mapping? I have, for example, here, this is a granite surface, so it will be kind of grainy. So in this case, we can keep this at 0.5, and for the roughness, maybe 0.1. That will roughen this up a little bit. That's just an uniform. Or if we would say this is maybe not a man-made material, we have actually different elements that reflect things to different degrees. What about we bring this actually into the roughness, and then this here for the moment I make black. Try to see what happens, or I bring this to specularity. Maybe with this detail it's a little bit tricky to see, but if I zoom in, you can see that the reflection is indeed not super even. It's a tiny detail. So because the camera will be further away, it might not necessarily see it with the floor. We will see this more. So I'm not bothering too much because from a distance here, this will be kind of blurred out. But we can do this actually here on the ground too. There actually it will be more interesting to play with it. So here I have this image again. Okay, so let's see what happens when I bring this into specularity. Roughness I set to 0, and then the color I set to kind of like black. Oh, look at this. That's kind of cool, actually. You can see how what you see now is not actually the texture, but where the texture is, it is more or less reflective. And we can also put this into maybe the roughness. Ooh, you see, this is really nice. So we can set an overall reflectivity, and then where it's black, it is very polished, and where it's white, it is actually more rough. So it gives us this rather uneven reflective look. And that's actually how we can make these materials simply look more realistic. Now I'm mixing actually the original image back into the color. Now you can see right there, I have the reflection of the light source. Rendering is also a little bit about trickery, creating illusions. So what about the reflection isn't strong enough? Okay, maybe I will adjust the size of this lamp. Maybe I make this 6 inches. See, then it covers, or I get a bigger reflection there. So essentially what I'm demonstrating here right now is kind of like how you have to think about rendering too. We can make this realistic, or we can also try to manipulate things and craft our illusion. So I focus on the left, and that's the end result. How I get to there, who really knows at the beginning. Okay, very good. Going back to the floor, the reflection is good, the image is good, not necessarily, whoops, this grid, this looks wrong. So I need to do something on the bump mapping. And I have actually an image for this. So I will go to add, then image texture. There we are. Click open textures. And you see here the title grid. This is 8 by the length of the room. And then here I have a title grid 8 by 8. This texture that came in is also 8 by 8. So I will use this one. Quick check. How does this look when we bring this on? Oh, looks actually like it's perfectly mapping. I made the proportion of the images the same. So one last check. Yep, very good. So what we will do is this image we will use to adjust the bump mapping to create an artificial groove. So we want to have a bump. There we are. Color into the height, normal into normal. Whoa, look at that. You can see actually the groove. 0.1, no, don't make it too strong. We can really limit this effect till it feels believable. Don't make it too subtle, because when it's gone, then it looks flat. 0.001. We can still see actually that there is a break in the reflection. Yeah, that's all we need. That's perfect. That looks pretty believable. Okay, very good. So you see, by having actually these two images at the same size, the title grid having an 8 by 8 pattern, and also having here this stone texture being square, really helps actually making sure that everything perfectly matches up. So while we only added this texture for the stone in SketchUp, if I then match the bump map to the same proportion in any render engine, and here again, this is Blender, we can just do an overlay so that the grid for the tiles really lines up with kind of like where these grid elements are in the stone texture. Very good. Okay. Can make this a little bit smaller. Zoom in here. Alt-H, show everything. So we have the ceiling. We also can now see here the back. There's actually the painting. Is this too small, too big? It feels a little bit small now. Right click and then set origin to geometry. This is now at the center of the object. And then when I press S and Shift X in my case, it will scale it up and left and right, but it does not scale along the x-axis. So when I take a look from the top, you see this does not get thicker. S and X scales along the X, Shift X, it scales along Y and Z. So now for this presentation, I can also move this around. Does this image in the rendering actually look centered or not? Now, again, I have to pay attention to how do things look actually inside the rendering more, maybe than making this an accurate model. I can trick. So this can go over a little bit. Yeah, no, this feels actually more balanced. Very good. There we are. So maybe last thing to explore, what is it if I now at this point would like to change the wall color to two different colors? Maybe white for the left and right, and the back has this accent color. Well, this is very easy to do. So I select the wall, Shift H to hide everything else. Then I go into edit mode. I can select with face, select this face, and you see this is wall color. And this one I call blue. Then I can select this wall and this wall, this and this, this and this and this. And here I make a new material. And new, call this wall white. And then, very important, you have to click Assign. So with these faces selected, I assign this material to that selection. Leave edit mode, Alt-H, show everything. And there, you see now I have actually isolated the walls, left and right. And now I have the ability to play with this. So maybe, oh, what about I make this orange? What about maybe here, this I make actually nicely white. So the sides are colored. The front is actually not colored. So maybe I should call this then white front and maybe wall sides. Now, so it makes a little bit more sense. I can also adjust the specularity. This is maybe way too glossy. 0.1. There, it's a little bit of a shimmer happening. Yeah, not too bad, no? Okay. So this then basically covers everything, how to set up the lights, materials, set up the rendering. The only thing then now left is how do we do actually the final rendering? So when I go to here for the render properties, so this is view and render. Viewport basically is what's happening inside there in real time. And I can turn this down to be really brutally bad, like 2 samples and then it's very grainy. If I set this to 100 and set this to 100, you see this goes up till 100 and then actually it starts cleaning this up a little bit more. So this is already taking a tick longer. And the more samples we have, the better the result will actually be. Denoising is really great at the beginning of the work, but the problem with denoising is also it filters out fine details. So from a distance, this darker countertop might be fine. If I zoom in, then we will see denoise artifacts. Which is why also during final rendering, we have here another setting. So maybe 200, 300 is fine. While I'm in the viewport, I set this to 1010 so I can work rather fast. No? And we have, do we have any other interesting elements here to note? No, this is pretty much, we can ignore for the moment. So it's basically the viewport and the denoising. Based on the system, we can render CPU or GPU. GPU is faster when, let me go back to here for one more time. So I'm here on a Mac. So I will set this to the GPU to render. And if you're on a PC with an NVIDIA card, you might have CUDA here. So you could use this. Very good. Okay, so now the settings are kind of done. We could then go to output. So this is the format, which is kind of a little bit big to render while I do this screen recording. So I set this to 25%, makes this 25% of this 1100. And then when I hit render, and there you see, there's my 25% image, and the samples go up go down pretty fast. Okay, very good. There we are. Wasn't too bad. I can then actually also go to slot 2, because maybe now the ceiling is a little bit still way too glossy for me. I turn this rendering off and just render. And then I can compare. There's still a little bit of reflection visible. But it is actually much less. So maybe not too bad. How does this look when we turn this really into a matte surface? Does it really need to be glossy? The sides may be okay, because glossy paints are also washable. Matte not. Yeah, that was actually not too bad. So I see the ceiling, but I'm not distracted by the reflection. Here I see the walls. I can see the reflection of the bathroom elements. Makes sense. Guides my eyes better. Very good. So with this, then you can switch between the different results. And then the one you like, you simply go to Image, Save As. I would always save as PNG. Select the desktop and click Save Image. And that's basically it. And if you make certain variations, we could, for example, also, when I turn this one on, maybe do a rendering. So these lights now I would like to be, wait, there's the lamp. These lamps, for example, are off. And here, maybe this lamp I also set to 0. Not too bad. So now I can take a look at how this looks actually, just with the top light and then the backlight. What about maybe here? I can turn this off. Again, selecting the correct material. 0. 0.1. What about we give this a little bit of a glimmer? There. This is maybe not too bad. So we can see there's something going on without being too strong. Very good. So I think it makes sense how then you can very quickly generate different renderings and explore different lighting ideas. And that's it.